So to our right, you'll see Rusty, Marcus, and I. We are excited to be here this morning and just appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today as we engage in professional learning. We know that this is a journey and that all of us are entering a path at a very different place. And based on the feedback that you provided last time, we recognize that some of you are wondering, why are we spending time talking about identity, values, and beliefs? And we know that in order for us to have skills and behaviors to teach our students, we first have to think deeply about who we are as educators. What is our identity? Who do we believe we are? What do we value? And so we're on this journey together, and just like when my wife and I were hiking in Oregon, sometimes we get on a path and we get a mile or a half mile out and we wonder, where in the world are we going? Did we go the right way? We don't have a map, our cell phones aren't working, are we lost? But we know that if we keep on forging ahead and if we rely on the resources we have, we'll get to a place that might offer us a new and a different perspective. And so that's what we're doing in our morning time here. We're not spending time on skills and behaviors yet because we recognize that it's important for us to spend time on who we are as teachers, what is our identity, what values and beliefs do we hold, because our skills and behaviors illuminate that to our students. So we just ask that you lean in this morning, as there may be times again where it is uncomfortable or you have to take time to reflect. But we hope by the end of the morning that you're able to have a new perspective and to just see something differently than maybe you saw before walking into this room. The purpose for our time together is on the screen. We'll invite you to take 15 seconds to read that. In 5 days together, we will work to refine our practices in hopes that we can bring those changes and that new learning back to our students. And we know, as we talked about last time, that collective teacher efficacy is John Hattie's #1 indicator of student success. So we're excited to begin collecting evidence, which you'll do through your implementation guides, and share with one another in your afternoon sessions. In addition to having a purpose, we have these 3 objectives that we are hoping to accomplish by the end of the year. So first, it's important for us to take time to look inside at our identities, as I've said before, because our behaviors and skills are reflective of that. Secondly, it's important for us to be conscious of how the decisions we make impact our students and their identities as mathematicians and as human beings. And third and finally, we hope to raise our consciousness that teaching math is bigger than pedagogy. Yes, mathematical pedagogy is important, but we're teaching human beings. And so it's important for us to remember that the framework we looked at last time is important, but the work we're doing is bigger than that framework might suggest at first glance. Knowing that all of us had an opportunity to find our team and to locate our logo, I'll invite you to, again, look at your logo. Call back any memories you may have of why your team decided to create that logo. What might that logo mean? What other logos might represent us in our life, our identity? And so knowing that building community is something that we value and believe in, we're going to provide an opportunity for you to engage and meet somebody new. So in just a moment, we'll invite you to stand up and encourage you to make eye contact with somebody whom you don't yet know. At that time, you will begin to share what your team logo is and why your team chose that logo. So partner A will share first. Partner B will pause, paraphrase, and then ask a probing question. What other logos might reflect your identity, values, and beliefs? And then you'll switch roles. During this time, we ask you to be mindful of airtime, knowing that this is going to be very quick. So try not to dominate the airtime, but to be a great partner and listen as well. You'll know that we're ready to move on because we will be back in this spot all morning. This will signify to you that we're ready to come back to the group, and we'll hold our hand up. If you recognize that we're in this spot, we'll invite you to do the same, to just allow others around you to re-engage back in the whole group activity. What questions might we have around the next 5-ish minutes of collaboration time? As we move throughout the morning, we're going to continue to have opportunities to engage in authentic dialogue with our peers and colleagues. And we know that in order to do that most productively, we would invite you to utilize the 7 norms of collaborative work. If you've been at Network, you are very familiar with these. The 3 that we're going to be focusing on today are pausing, paraphrasing, and posing questions. If you right now were to offer a paraphrase of what's happened so far this morning, what might that paraphrase look and sound like? So I'll invite you to take 30 seconds to create a paraphrase, either in your head or jot one down. As we move throughout the morning, we're going to invite you to be mindful of pausing, paraphrasing, and posing questions. In order to do that, we're going to take a moment to self-reflect on how we feel we individually are with pausing, paraphrasing, and posing questions. Just a minute, we'll invite you to turn to a page in your packet. In that packet, you'll have an opportunity to evaluate yourself on where you feel you are currently at with pausing, paraphrasing, and asking questions. After you've self-evaluated, we'll invite you to identify one thing that you would like to stay mindful of as we move throughout our time this morning. So in just a minute, you'll turn to page 2 in your packet. It'll say Norms Inventory at the very top. You'll self-evaluate and then identify one norm that you would like to stay especially mindful of this morning. We'll give you 92 seconds to complete that self-reflection. As we move throughout the morning, keep in mind that we are trying to provide a continued learning experience. And the way that we, as facilitators, are trying to do that is we are modeling, we're providing you with an experience, and we're also utilizing strategies that you may utilize when you go back to your classrooms with your very own learners. That's what we call the triple track agenda. So just be mindful this morning that we are trying to emulate things that we hope you can do with your learners, no matter what grade level or content area you teach. Our agenda for the morning is located in 2 spaces. We're going to take some time this morning to think about what we did last time here at MichME, when we remember when.
And secondly, we're going to move into our journey. Where are we at on our professional learning journey? And what impact does that have on us and our students?
Digging into our identity, values, and beliefs, we're going to think about what does John Hattie and his team say about ability grouping. What do we need to believe in order to ability group? And what impact might that have on our students when we ability group?
And as our learning takes a closer step to the classroom, we're going to talk about positioning for a second and what impacts that has on us and on students. What is positioning?
And at the very end of our time together this morning, we've carved out time to reflect and act before heading to lunch and then to our more focused breakout sessions in the afternoon. The agenda will live to the left and to the right of the screen all morning long.
So knowing last time we were together, we had a very brief opportunity to unpack this teaching framework for mathematics and come up with several examples that might fall into these buckets. So I invite you to look at the screen and orient your thinking back towards this teaching framework for mathematics very briefly. This framework is only as powerful as our intention and our purpose in orienting our work towards it. So in order to move our students forward, we have to be very intentional and very purposeful with all of the decisions that we make for our students. So what intent and purpose are we bringing to our learning today and intentionally bring back to the classroom? So as a team, we looked at the banners and the examples that you provided around the frameworks. And we looked for trends and patterns. And several things that emerged from all 25 of the patterns was that we believe in all students. We believe in equal opportunity for all students accessing the mathematics. We believe in creating a culture where our students can take risks and create an environment to learn together and reason productively as a group. Lastly, there was a theme of why. Why are we engaging in this work? What is important to us as teachers, and what fuels us, our professional learning, and what fuels our actions in the classroom that we are so dedicated to? But this framework is more than just pedagogy. It is more than just instruction. We have to think about what our why is relative to creating equal opportunities for all students. Yes, this framework is important, but more importantly is that we are able to reach all students and provide them access and opportunities in an environment that allows each student to access the mathematics at high levels. So we need to think about our equitable practices that we are creating so that students have access. So I ask that you internally dialogue around the two prompts on the screen. What comes to mind when you hear the word equity? What do you think of? What practices might you be employing in your classroom to allow all students access to the mathematics? After you have a few ideas in your mind, I ask that you generate those ideas in your notebooks. So please open your notebooks. We're going to take roughly just 45 seconds to just brainstorm what comes to mind when you hear the word equity, and what might be some equitable practices that you are already using in your classroom. This will be a quick, short write for 45 to 60 seconds. So now that we've had an opportunity to get some very brief thinking out into our notebooks, we ask that you turn and talk to a partner and share your ideas very briefly. We are going to only speak for about 90 seconds to surface where our internal beliefs are around equitable practices and what we understand equity to be. We'll take 90 seconds total. We'll come back together when I'm in this space, in this position. Okay. So please identify a partner you'll have conversation with, sharing your prompts or your responses to the two prompts on the screen. I hope you enjoyed your brief conversation with the person next to you. Know that we're going to take an opportunity to continue to unpack our relationship with equitable practices and equity overall so that students can have access to the mathematics. To further support our thinking, I invite you to take a look at the screen and make sense of the difference between equality and equity. What are you noticing about the visual, and what connections might you be making back to your classroom? So this thinking may have added on to where it may have provided a new lens with which you are looking through. And rather than speaking to a partner right now, I ask you to grab your pen and add to your thinking in your journal. How might this have changed your thinking or pushed your thinking in a different direction? So what additional information is gleaned by this visual for you? We'll just take 30 seconds, quick write. Thank you for taking the time to explore this topic. Andrew will continue the conversation in our thinking moving forward from this abstract level of why we do what we do down to the student level in the classroom as well of the actions and behaviors that we can engage in.
We recognize we've thrown a lot at you already with new table seats, and now these large words of equality and equity. So it's important for us to remember our why. Why are we in this room together? What are we hoping to accomplish today? The way that we're hoping to do that is through our 3 learning intentions and success criteria for our time together, which will come up on the screen now. So first, it's important for us to understand our why. What has our journey been? What is our identity? How has our journey shaped our values and our beliefs? So first, it's important for us to understand our why. What has our journey been? What is our identity? How has our journey shaped our values and our beliefs? We'll then use DILT's framework to continue to think about how does our identity, values, and beliefs impact all students in our classroom. And last but not least, we're going to unpack positioning. What is positioning? And what is one way that we might be able to position students to be knowers, doers, and learners of mathematics? So as we move forward this morning, we're first going to spend some time thinking about our why. And knowing that this is a challenging topic and one that evokes a lot of thinking, we thought it would be best to provide one possible example of a journey and why the person is doing the work that they're doing, why they have these values and beliefs. And we're going to look through the lens of DILTs, so that identity, those values and beliefs, capabilities, skills, and behaviors. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rusty, who is going to share his journey with all of us.
And as Andrew said, journeys are important for all of us, and connecting that to it's hard to think about how our journey that we've been on has influenced who we are as an educator today. And so like Andrew said, the purpose of this quick portion of our morning together is to think about one journey and what events along that journey have we experienced, and how might those events have influenced us as individuals and us as educators. So, to organize that for us, I am going to speak into 4 different buckets. So, along my journey, the buckets that we'll be speaking in are family. Side note, I didn't ask them or tell them that their faces would be up here, so if you know them, don't let the secret out. Education. How has education and the system that we go through influenced our beliefs and values? Life as a parent, having kids entering school age. And perspective and awareness. Like all of you, I've been on a journey in our education system, and as we go through this journey, our perspective and awareness of what's happening around us seem to widen and get more clarity. Those are the 4 buckets that I will speak to help all of us understand how a journey might influence our beliefs, values, and identity. So I grew up in a rural town not too far from here. I am one of 4 siblings, and our parents, or my parents who are pictured there, have done a lot for us. They have set us up for success in many, many ways. One outcome or success criteria for that is that of all 4 of us kids, every one of us have at least a 4-year degree. So there's something that has happened through their leadership and their support that have positioned us to be in the place that we are today. In education, there are many events as I traveled through K-12 that stand out. And to keep this relatively short, I'm going to highlight one of those events for us and how it might have influenced my beliefs and values and my identity as I walk around today. And that one event is a time that I remember from my journey that was in 7th grade. And in 7th grade, I had an opportunity to take an assessment. And that assessment was one that would allow me to either enter an accelerated track or stay in a track with other grade level peers. And I was one of the students who had the opportunity to stay with grade level and not be accelerated. With that came a lot of feelings. So not only did it make me feel not good enough, not smart, not able to be successful in mathematics, It also separated me from some of my friends and peers as I watched through the next 5 years of my education journey. I watched them travel a different path and have access to different things than I had access to. Luckily, I was in a place that this lower track was one that valued problem solving, that valued understanding, that valued student perspective, and taught in a way that had that framework in mind. And so it actually gave me opportunities to be successful, even though I was in this lower track. So it influenced me in a way that gave me feelings that hurt at some points throughout my high school journey, but also looking back, it gave me support and a type of mathematics and a type of conversation that supported me from where I was in 7th grade to being where I was today. That decision was one that was out of my control, just like the decision of being a part of my family. That wasn't out of my control, but it gave me an unearned advantage. I carry that with me today. As a parent, we have 2 little ones, and one of them is in school age now, and it's amazing how perspective, values, and beliefs change, as many of you know, once you become a parent, and how the things that we value in terms of education have shifted drastically for me in the 2 years because of these 2 little ones that you see on the screen. One example or event of that is 2 nights ago, we had an opportunity to work on some homework with our 1st grader. And so this is a time where I get to do some math, so it's exciting. For her, it's not as exciting, though. She's developing an identity and a belief that she doesn't like homework. And what also surfaces during that time is this struggle. So she's beginning to feel a struggle when it comes to mathematics. And she's beginning to feel some type of way about mathematics because of that struggle. The problem that we were working on the other night is a missing subtrahend problem. The problem type can be very challenging for students. And so knowing what I know now, I have opportunities to help her construct a productive mathematical identity and belief system because I know as an adult who's had opportunities to provide her manipulative so that she can see it, feel it, and touch it. I know that 14 take away something equals 7 is hard for her. But I know that if I decrease the numbers, decrease the complexity of the problem, but keep the same situation, we could solve a problem like 5 take away something equals 2 with manipulatives and scaffold her up to a point where she could feel success. Still getting access to grade level content, but in a scaffolded way. Building her identity, beliefs, and values as a mathematician. She already is feeling the work that's happening in mathematics influence her beliefs about herself. And it's my job to make sure that her beliefs are what we want them to be. And like all of you, our perspective as we travel along this journey in our professional life and our awareness of what's happening around us continue to get clearer. We continue to see and know more because of the opportunities that we have. And one of the ways that this has happened for me is throughout this journey, 11 or 12 years in education, we begin to see differences in how our system of education is producing and supporting students. And so there's a narrative out there that talks about predicting student achievement based on the amount of money that their family has. And it's very clear that there's a difference in opportunity depending on income of family. That's something that is very, very clear for me now that I'm in this journey. And so to think about how money can influence the understanding of mathematics that we have is an interesting thing to think about, and how our system is continuing to make sure that this stays that way. This data isn't changing yet. it's staying the same. If you don't come from money, chances of you understanding mathematics are very, very low. It brings a lot of questions to my mind along my journey of why that is and what I can do about it. Money, though, isn't the only thing. So some out there may tell you a story about money is the only thing, and if you don't have money, you can't be successful, blah, blah, blah. It's this class system. The other thing that jumps out at us is the impact of race. So I argue that money isn't the only thing. And data that we know that's very, very clear is that if I'm white but don't come from money, I still have a better chance of being successful than if I'm someone of color who has money. All of this awareness and perspective continues to shape who I am. And as you see me walk throughout this day and walk throughout every day of my professional life, these things I carry with me. And so all of this conversation and awareness speaks to, does hard work really get us where we want to go? And I'm beginning to see it clearer that I don't believe that it is hard work alone that gets us where we want to be. The students who come from families who are economically disadvantaged, I argue, are working hard, but we don't see any change in their outcomes. It's not just hard work that makes a difference. That's something I'm seeing more clearly now. And I ask myself, so what is it? That journey, family, where I come from, education, some events that I've experienced, the idea of being a parent and how that's changed, and this perspective that we have as we continue throughout our journey and it becomes more clear, have shaped my beliefs and values and my identity. The ways that they are, I value all learners' journey. Similar to my journey growing up in a rural town with parents who supported me and my siblings to be what we are today, that's my journey. Everyone in the room has a different journey, and every one of our students have a journey. And how do we find ways to value their journey? I believe that our actions influence learners. Similar to my experience in K-12, there's only one event, but that event had a huge influence on who I am today, what I believe. And I believe that every one of us in the room who set up these systems are having an influence, conscious or unconscious, on our students. I believe all learners deserve access. So similar to my daughter, she felt the struggle. She feels the struggle every day. I believe she deserves access. I believe every student deserves access. And I also believe that our system isn't yet set up to produce equitable outcomes. Taking a step deeper. Identity. Who am I as I travel throughout my day? I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for all learners. Every student deserves all of those things that I believe, and it's my obligation to support it. And an obligation of making a difference. So there's been a long journey that's got me here. Some of the things that happened along my journey were unearned advantages. And so now that I'm here, I have an obligation to pay that back. So how might I make a difference?
Thank you, Rusty, for sharing your journey and for being transparent with a room full of 250 plus educators. Knowing that we've had a lot of time to hear Rusty and think about our journey, we're now going to provide you with another opportunity to reflect upon what you just heard. So in a moment, we'll invite you to open your journal back up and think about your own journey. In what ways has your personal journey influenced who you are as an educator when you are teaching and learning mathematics? What events may have situated you individually for success that were out of your control? We're going to provide you with about 2 minutes of individual think time, knowing that after we journal, we are all going to have an opportunity to stand and share our journey with our teammates. So this is an individual reflective think time, priming us for the next activity. What questions might we have? And knowing that all of us have had our own journeys, it's important for us to allow our journeys to enter into the room. The way that we're going to do this is a stand and share protocol. So what this will look and sound like is, when prompted, one person from your table group will start. They will stand up and they will share one experience that sticks out to them and why it influenced their identity as an educator. So you're going to share one experience and one reason why. After that person has stand and shared, that person will sit down and we'll go clockwise around the table. This protocol does not call for crosstalk, so after the person shares, they will sit down and the next person will stand up and you will just keep going. We'll know as a group that we're ready to move on when we don't see people standing up and sharing their journey anymore. That'll be a sign to us as facilitators that we're ready to move into the next part of the agenda. The person at your table group who is going to go first is the person who teaches the oldest students age-wise. Thank you. You'll notice that that activity, the purpose of that activity, directly correlates to our first learning intention and success criteria. So it's important for us to make a connection to our why and to be able to share a connection for why we are the way we are, and we were just able to hopefully do that. Knowing that that is one of 3 learning intentions and success criteria, I'm going to hand it over to Marcus, who will take us into the next part of our agenda.
So knowing that we have 2/3 of the learning left to occur, I ask that you maybe put down those binoculars that you were using to look at your past that have impacted your journey. We're going to put down those binoculars and put on a new lens and think about how our identities that we currently hold are now impacting students. So those identities that we hold, how are we now impacting students? So we're going to be focusing on the second learning intention. Knowing that we value all students having access, culture, a safe space to do their best learning, we wonder if you might take a moment to read through the quote on the screen before we engage in our own individual reading. So we need to make those purposeful decisions. We need to have intention to our actions. And part of our hope here is to raise consciousness around our impact on students' identities and help with the how. Once we have more consciousness and awareness of how we're working with students, then we can work at improving our craft to help students engage and have access to the mathematics. So we have a profound responsibility to connecting with all students, but particularly those that are most at risk. How are we being mindful of formulating their identities productively with mathematics? We have the greatest impact of those that are most at risk in influencing their identities. We can either act as gatekeepers to high-level mathematics, or we can open the door and provide scaffolds to reach that point. So let's be mindful of how we might be impacting all students, particularly those at risk. So what we're going to do next is we're going to read through a few pages in Hattie's text. I will reveal the pages in just a minute. I know that we love to dive in. So at this point, we'll pause and allow you to read through the process of how we might be engaging in this, and then I'll have an opportunity to just share some nuances of the protocol itself. So I invite you to read through the protocol. So I'm looking at some eyes that are squinting from the back. It might be best to summarize the protocol as well. So what we're going to do is we're first going to read through a few pages in Hattie's text, and then when prompted, we'll ask that you stand and make eye contact with 2 other people to form a group of 3. Person A is going to start the conversation by sharing their phrase. B adds on, C adds on, and then A paraphrases the group's thinking. This will be repeated for all 3 individuals. Okay. Some of the nuances of this is it's going to feel awkward. You're going to want to jump in, and you're going to want to affirm, and you're going to want to support your colleagues because that's what we do. But we ask that you continue to stick to the strict protocol of A sharing, B adds on, C adds on. It might feel a little awkward, but that's okay. You're used to it at this point today. And then lastly, as we move in, being mindful of the reading and how it relates to our identities and impacting students' identities as well. So what questions might we have before we engage in the reading, other than the page numbers? We're going to be diving into page 154 and 155. I will prompt you when I ask you to stand and make eye contact, so please remain seated. So we've had an opportunity to raise our consciousness around a specific practice and our relationship to it, and how that might align with our current beliefs, or it might challenge our current beliefs as well. And we're probably wondering the why and how for this, and know that we are going to get there throughout our time together. But before we get there, we ask that you take a moment to reflect in your journal around your relationship to this topic with the 2 prompts on the screen. So all we're going to do is record our current thinking around the 2 prompts on the screen, and then we'll have an opportunity to surface some of that thinking for the whole group. So now is our opportunity to process and reflect individually before we raise a few topics, whole group. We had an opportunity to explain how ability grouping may impact students' identity, and in what ways we might further connect and build students' a productive math identity for our mathematicians. Before we move on to our next learning intention, I wonder if there might be a few ideas that we'd like to surface for the group. We'll take three topics that might benefit the group. Who might be willing to share? 1, thank you. And 2 more. 2, thank you. And 3, where are you? 2 is just fine. 1?
I said that when you group by the ability, I don't notice much of a difference with the high achievers. Like, they don't necessarily feel any different as far as I can tell. But when you group all your low achieving kids together, they all catch on and they're realizing, oh, you didn't do well, I didn't do well. She just put us all together because we didn't do well. And then they all have the mindset that they don't know math, they don't know how to do it, they hate math, and so nothing ends up happening in their group. They either are discussing about how much they hate math, or they just don't even attempt what they believe they don't know how to do it.
Students are aware and attuned to their position and how we're either giving them power or we're not giving them power. We know that students are always very aware. Thank you. Nick, do you want to be number 3, or do you want to add on to that? Okay, thank you. And number 2?
One of the things that I was reflecting on was even with flexible grouping, if you have the perfect group or the perfect flexible grouping in your classroom, we also have to build that culture where students are not just doing side-by-side work, but they're actually working together and communicating. So how do we do that as educators? Get them to actually break down those walls, support each other, not just do work next to each other.
So we know that productive conversations happen around mathematics content, but we can't leave out, and that makes me think of the teaching framework, right? That is an instructional practice. However, it is nuanced that we need to have structures around how students talk to one another and what dialogue looks and sounds like in our space. So by providing those structures, we can pair those together for more effective learning. Thank you. And Nick, 3?
The disadvantage that we're providing to our lower learners through ability grouping is very evident to me. But I'm having some breakthroughs about the disadvantages that we might be providing to our higher learners. In my building, some ability grouping is taking place where you've got high flyer students who they're getting them then to the next standard, the next standard, the next standard, the next standard at a very surface level way of learning. Where now in fourth grade, where I'm trying to get them to go deeper into maybe the fourth grade standards, think about them in a brand new way, but their mindset is, nope, I need to be doing something ahead of the rest of the group. I need to be on a separate standard. Give me something different. Give me something different. Where I'm trying to get them, hey, no, let's take a look what we can do, what you can bring in to this. How deep can we go? But their mindset doesn't go that route. They want just the next surface level topic.
What is our vision of a mathematician, and what do mathematicians do, and how do we leverage that diversity of thought so that there is collective, thorough, and deep understanding?
One item to surface is that we've spent a lot of our conversation this morning around ability grouping, and that's one decision that we make. So what other decisions are we making that have an impact on our students' identities, values, and beliefs? We're talking about one tangible thing, but in what other ways might we be impacting students' identities? And so to dig deeper into that, Rusty will take us into the next portion of our agenda.
So as we progress through our agenda, we're moving in now to the positioning piece. And hopefully you're feeling us start in this abstract upper level of identity, beliefs, and values. And now we're venturing closer and closer into the how, into classroom practice. And so knowing that we all value the opportunity to take something back, you should start to feel that ability grouping conversation may have begun to think about your classroom practice. And now we're going to get into consciousness around positioning and how we might begin to take action on that tomorrow. In order to do that, we're going to focus in on our learning intention and success criteria for positioning. Positioning is a topic that is deep. So when you think of the well of positioning, there's a long way to fall down it. Today, we're just taking that first step. And so leaving here today, it's important that we have an awareness of what it is and how we might describe it to a friend, knowing that this is a journey that we are going to continue on throughout our next opportunities to chat together. And the way that we are going to think about positioning is Marcus and Andrew have referenced throughout the morning the teaching framework. And so this is pedagogy for mathematics. We need to be thinking about each of these buckets. But there were things that we've offered today that live outside of that. And we're thinking about how might we think about our practice in ways that influence identity, values, and beliefs, and position students as knowers and doers of mathematics. And positioning is one of these teaching moves and a consciousness that can help us do that. So one thing we've talked about is influencing identity, values, and beliefs of students. But we haven't talked about how to do that yet. Positioning is one way that we'll unpack it. The way that we're going to interact and develop our awareness of this new vocabulary term is through the reading that is in your packet. That reading is a short read. You will be able to, turn there. I should have had some tricks for that. On that page in your packet, you'll notice there are 3 sections. We're going to read the first 2. This should help us begin to create consciousness around what this term is and what it might look and sound like in the classroom. Knowing that we're going to do this individually and internally, there is a focus question here for you to think about. If someone wasn't in this room and reading this, how might you explain this to them in their own words? So it's just developing surface level consciousness of what the term is. And moving forward in just a little bit, we're going to have a chance to look at a video and try to identify moves a teacher might make in that video that could position students. So that's kind of foreshadowing what's to come. reviewing very quickly. We'll individually read and annotate the text any way that you wish. You'll internally jot things down or summarize what that reading might say, and think about how might I explain this to someone who isn't in the room today. Once we've had a time to do that, we'll jump into our next piece. What questions might we have about the next 3 minutes? Have fun. Thank you. So we've had an opportunity to begin to unpack the how or what positioning is. Now we're going to look at a video of actual authentic instruction and be able to look at it through the lens of positioning. So, on the page after your reading, you'll notice that there's some space there for you to take note of teacher actions and student actions. This is simply a place to organize your thinking. We're going to watch about 4-ish minutes of video. We are going to pause about 2 minutes in and allow you an opportunity to talk with a friend about what things you may have noticed in the video. We will encourage all of us to look through the lens of positioning. So you'll find yourself identifying moves the teacher is making. And we're going to encourage and push all of us to think about that move, but more importantly, how might that move have positioned students in the classroom? Identify the move the teacher is using, and most importantly, think about how that move may have positioned students in the classroom. Assuming technology cooperates, we will start the video now, and we'll pause in about 2 minutes. Prior to the video starting, what questions might we have about the next bit of time together?
That we were going to use the math we know to solve the problem. And we also said that we would use quantities. So there's a purple and pinkish strategy up here, and then there's a blue strategy. Wondering which strategy is the quantity that you might use to help you solve next time. So would you use the quantities that are up there in the purple and pink, or would you use the strategies that's up here in blue? I appreciate how alive you're thinking and inspiration about which ones we might use. So in our brains, we're thinking about which strategy might be a quantity that we would use. We're going to talk to a partner again. So a quantity I would use to help me solve next time is I would count by 2. Or a quantity I would use to help me count next time is I would use partner that. Like, this time we're going to let partner 2 go first. Watch the right window. Ready? Go. You guys are really excited to talk to each other. What quantities do you use?
And we've watched just a short clip. And so our task now, we're going to invite all of us to think about what moves might the teacher have made that positions students. And we're going to give us an opportunity just to chat about that with an elbow partner for 2 minutes. So it's important that you name the move. I noticed the teacher did blank, and it positioned students by blank. Have fun. So we've had a chance to begin to think through the lens of positioning. We are going to view the next bit of time, knowing that the teacher, this is the first interaction with the students, kind of creating a little context there. What might be some things that we noticed that could potentially be positioning in action that we noticed in the video? Who might be willing to offer something for the good of our group? Okay, we have 1 and 2 and 3. Thank you. Would you be able to stand and share so we can hear? Thank you.
I noticed that the teacher provided choice and honored students' individuality, which kind of positioned them to be able to be comfortable choosing a mathematical strategy and to feel comfortable with the fact that differences are okay within mathematics.
So providing choice was one way that we may have noticed positioning happen. Thank you. And 2.
I noticed that he gave a very specific prompt for how they were supposed to start that partner talk. So that positioned all students to kind of know where they were supposed to be going with that discussion instead of just, I don't know what I'm supposed to say here. They all kind of knew we're all supposed to be sharing the same thing.
So the teacher provided a sentence stem, and that gave students access and positioned them as capable mathematicians. Thank you. And 3.
And I was just saying that the teacher used names, and knowing this was their first interaction, I think it's very valuable that teachers use names, especially when you're praising thinking, because that becomes part of their identity, that I am a person who does math and thinks about math when they hear their name.
So our name is connected to our identity, and by using a name, we can speak to their authentic identity. Positions them as mathematicians. And we have one more add-on, and then we'll look at the next piece.
I'd like to throw a challenge out there. He had the strategy were color-coded. There was pink and blue, and blue would associate with the guys, and pink would associate with the girls. And I'm not sure that they would cross over those strategies. They would stay with the color they're familiar with.
So we noticed there was an intentional use of color, and maybe we'll be able to unpack that a little bit at the end and hear from the teacher about the purpose there. Thank you. And we have one more add-on, and then we're going to get into the next. Thank you, Andrew.
Noticing the one young man up front that was rapping or singing or dancing for the camera, whatever he was doing, purposely going to that group and not really commenting on the behavior, but redirecting it. I see your energy. How can I help you? You know, it let the boy focus, but it didn't make a big deal out of it to the class. It just really sort of gave the idea that I want to hear what you have to say too. Let's focus on this right now.
The teacher presumed positive intentions from the students and named the behavior as excitement to dive into the conversation, and that positioned students in some type of way. Thank you for adding that. We'll take that and continue our conversation in the video, watching the teacher, and specifically through the lens of how might those teacher moves have positioned students.
Look and sound like Joshua's and Peyton's. We heard lots of really good thinking, and Isaiah, I was talking to Isaiah, and he said that he learned something new from Eliza today. Isaiah, what did you learn from Eliza that you could maybe use next time when you are counting? Yeah, so Isaiah learned that he could look for or make a 10 to help him count next time, rather than counting by ones. So remember that when we're learning today and every day, that we have to listen to our classmates and listen to our teacher, because they can help us learn new strategies for how to count. Can you do me a favor and give Joshua an air high five? Can you give Elijah an air high five? Can you give Isaiah an air high five for sharing that he learned something new? And then take that thing in and give yourself a pat on the back for thinking out loud.
And we'll take a minute to consolidate the thinking that you have on your paper and share some comments with a partner, have informal conversation around what we're noticed specifically through the lens of positioning. And in 2 minutes, we'll bring it back together with noticings and wonderings and hear from our teacher. We'll have an opportunity to put a bow on our conversation and our thinking for today around positioning by surfacing some of our noticings that we'd like to speak out loud for the group. You also could surface a noticing along with a wondering. So I noticed the teacher blank, and I wonder blank. If we do have any wonderings living in the room that we'd like to surface, we can have our teacher speak to any intention that might have been living inside him at this point. Who might have something that might benefit our group? Okay. Jason first, and Todd will come next.
I noticed that in your room it says today and every day, paraphrasing here, I don't remember exactly what it says. It said today and every day I want you to listen to each other and learn from each other. And that takes this idea of the normal classroom of a me and you guys as students to a us.
So Jason offered a noticing around the words that the teacher used of this is not my show, this is our show, and we're going to work together to construct understanding. And that was evident in the words that he chose. Thank you, Jason. Todd, if you could loudly, please.
I too noticed that he used today and every day and continued to be positive in all of his interactions with students. I wondered if this was around norm number 7 and just what things you're keeping in mind to continue with that positive attitude, or what any of your intentions might be as you think about that in the classroom.
So if you couldn't hear, that was around presuming positive intentions. It seemed that the teacher lived that norm within that small snippet of time. Andrew, might you be willing to add on any of your thinking behind some of the moves that you made?
Sure. So a luxury or not a luxury, depending on how you look at it, is that I didn't know these kids. I literally walked in 3 minutes before this video started playing and had the opportunity to just try things with them. And so I hold the belief that all students can, like Rusty referenced. And so when I walk into a classroom, I'm believing that every student in there has something to offer. And speaking to my journey, I had an incident where I didn't have that value or belief pushed on me. And so I'm really mindful of that when working with adults and with students, that we all have something to bring to the table. Just what questions might I ask to elicit what that student is able to bring to the table?
Others that are living in the room? So knowing that we are just beginning to think about positioning and how we position students as competent knowers and doers of mathematics, all students, we have success criteria of being able to state one way that you might be able to position a student in a productive way. And so this is getting to the how. So we'll invite you internally to reflect on your class, if you're a leader, your staff. How might you position a student or a teacher or a principal, a human being, in a productive way? What might be one intentional move you could utilize to position someone as a knower and doer who might not yet hold that identity? We're going to think internally about that for 30 seconds.
As we transition into reflection and action, we're aware that there are, or might be, some technical things that you are wondering about. This mic does not like me today. So as we move forward, we are going to invite you to utilize Google Classroom to keep that collective teacher efficacy alive in your breakouts. So in your breakouts this afternoon, you are going to have an opportunity to log into Google Classroom. And what that is going to look like is the last time we were together, you set a commitment. So you decided which breakout you were going to stay with for 5 days, and you decided what your commitment might be during those 5 days. Today we're going to narrow in, and we're going to set an intention. So what is a bite-sized chunk that you might be able to bring back to your learners between now and November 29th? That is your intention. So what from your breakout might you be able to take back and transfer to the learners in your building or classroom? In between now and November 29th, you'll have the opportunity to collect some evidence of that bite-sized chunk. That evidence can be one of the following or something outside this list. You can take pictures, you can videotape yourself, you can write a reflective journal entry, you can do anything you want, but what we're hoping and inviting us to do is we would really like to see what impact is this having on your students. Not we as in Marcus, Rusty, and myself, but we as in network.
We switched.
So what this will look like if you turn to the very last page in your packet. You'll see an example of an implementation guide. This guide is a opportunity for us to collect evidence and to share it with our peers who are in the same breakout as us, or peers who might not be able to be here. You've already chosen your session. You've already listed what your focus is going to be. And so today, you're going to really break it down in what you plan to implement. So that will go in the intention portion of your implementation guide. The purple section is the section that we'll be living in from now until November 29th. Once your evidence is uploaded, your facilitator from your breakout session or one of us will go in and provide you feedback as timely as we are able to, so that you have feedback on your journey.
I wonder if we might be able to surface the difference between professional learning and professional development from our first session as well. Professional learning is that permanent change in behaviors and actions.
What questions might we have about the implementation guide? Perfect. Just keep in mind that as you're moving through your time here today, our hope is that you're bringing your learning back to your classroom, but also to your building. So most of you are here with your building teams and hopefully an administrator or a leader. But know that we hope that you bring it back to your classroom and your district team, and that Marcus, Rusty, and I, if you live in Kent County, are your regional support. So we're here to support you and your team in whatever capacity you may invite us to do so. And if you live out of Kent County, we can help you locate who that regional support might be. Most of them are here in the afternoon. Looking at the clock, we have 6 minutes to reflect upon our morning and spring into action. But I can tell that Rusty has something he wants to say before we do that.
Thank you. One thing to paint with a highlighter for all of us is the importance of the survey at the end of the day. So we just want to speak that in the room. We truly look at where we are as a group and how you feel and where our current state is and define and design our next conversations. So know that we don't have the next one planned out because we truly use your feedback to define and design it. So it's important that every one of us fill out the survey and provide that feedback so that we can move forward in a productive way. That will happen in your breakouts at the end of the day. So just wait for that and be sure to complete it if you would, please.
Thank you. So as we spring into reflection and action, we'll invite you to individually think of a phrase that you would use to summarize our morning together. In the middle of your table group, you'll notice a large Post-it note. We'll ask that once you have that phrase formulated in your mind, you take an opportunity to write it down on that Post-it note. So every person will have an opportunity to write a word or phrase to summarize their morning in the center of their table group. We're going to provide 2.5-ish minutes of individual silent think time, and then we're going to airplane stack 3 as our exit ticket to head to lunch. So 2.5 minutes of individual think time, and 2.5 minutes we'll take 3 from the group to propel us into our afternoon. What words or phrases might you utilize to summarize our morning together? So we invite you, when you have that word or phrase, to just write it. There is no process or protocol. Just go ahead and write it on the Post-it. Each person is invited to write their own word or phrase. The energy in the room and knowing that we're looking forward to lunch, might we have 3 individuals who are willing to share their word or phrase with the whole group? We're looking for 3. Thank you. Molly is 1. Josh is 2.
Molly's been
3. Thank you. Molly, nice and loudly. She said, flexible grouping creates opportunity for equity. Thank you, Molly. Josh?
I just wrote positive.
Positive framing.
So with questions and student outcomes.
Thank you, Josh. And 3.
Okay.
I put reflecting with our journey, transitioning, listening, and then the why.
It's important to know our why. And so we appreciate the time that you've spent with us this morning. We hope that at the end of our morning you may have a different perspective and are able to see a few things more clearly or more broadly. We look forward to seeing everybody back at the EFC. Have a great lunch.
Nice work.